The Penguins' busy offseason has officially started. Ron Hextall wastes no time. He re-signs Bryan Rust to a 6-year deal worth $5.1 million per season. It's so good to get the first one out of the way, especially this early. I didn't even expect him to get to re-signing until at least the end of June. I love that at least one of them is done now. And it's no surprise that Bryan Rust is actually the first one to get signed. We just saw him a few days ago at the end of season media availability, essentially saying that he would love to come back. In the few minutes he spoke with the media, he essentially said, I love the city, I love the team, I want to stay here, my family likes it here, and essentially said, I'll take a pay cut. He didn't say those words, but, and this is quoting him, he did say, I'm not trying to rob anyone. So I'm sure when Ron Hextall heard him say that to the public, I'm sure they started discussing the deal right away. I have a feeling they probably were going back and forth throughout the entire season. At times, it said that Bryan Rust was looking to get paid, maybe a 6x6. In my opinion, if Bryan Rust hits free agency, I think he can go and get a 7-year deal at 6 to 6.5, maybe closer to the $7 million range. You may think that's a bit of an overpay, but first of all, free agency is all sorts of overpay left and right. And you look at the other comparables to Bryan Rust, that's what they've been getting. In just the last 3 years, Bryan Rust has been incredible. I mean, his whole career, he's been incredible. But these last 3 years alone, he's been playing at almost double his last contract, which was at $3.5 million. He was outplaying that all sorts, putting close to point per game seasons, on pace for 30 goals in each of his last 3 years. Throughout the entire season, I always thought that Rust was going to come back. But then as the season progressed and he was playing great, he started the season incredible, I was starting to think, okay, listen, he's given us some great hockey. He's won his cups. I'm thinking maybe the guy wants to go get paid despite wanting to stay. I think to Bryan Rust, staying here and essentially finishing his career in Pittsburgh where it started is what he wanted. Rust gets the term. He gets a pay raise to what he was currently making, almost $2 million more, but at the same time is taking a pay cut and is a very team-friendly deal for the Penguins. Is there any Penguins fans that don't like this deal? Because you can't. You have to love it. First of all, Rust is a great guy. We love seeing him. He's a fan favorite, but just forget about all that for a second. He's an amazing player. He's so flexible. He can play on your first line, which is one of the best first lines in the league with Gensel, Crosby, Rust. Great chemistry with them. He elevates them, and those guys are some superstars. And if you're not going to put him on the top line and you want to spread it out, he can go with Malkin on that second line and have just as good as chemistry. He's on your first power play unit, actually scores the occasional power play goal. Good net front guy on that power play. He's on your penalty kill. He always gives his 110% on every shift. You can put him in any situation. You need to protect your 1-goal lead. You need a goal because you're down by 1. Anything you want, you can put him on the ice. All of that just for $5.1 million per season. I would have been okay with 6, even 6.5 because he does so much. Oh, but 6 years is too much. Listen, you have to give him something. You know, you're not going to give the guy 3 years at 5. You have to pay him in term, pay him in price. And the Penguins chose to pay him in term, which I would have much rather done that. I have no problem with the 6 years. I actually like the 6 years, and I'll tell you why. First thing, you're pretty much announcing to everybody that you're not looking for a rebuild, which I love so much. I also think Russ is going to be productive throughout almost the entire contract. I think for at least the next 4 years, he's going to be producing at the same type of level. He's not that young rookie anymore, but he's only 30. I know 30 is that age in sports where you start getting up there, but it's not 33, 34. At 30, I think he can perform 30, 31, up to 34. And even then, maybe there he'll start falling off a bit. By then, he'll have 2 years left at a $5.1 million cap hit. You have to think they're going to be going up with the cap over the years. And even if it doesn't, who cares? I think the Penguins will have a ton of cap space by then. But the most important thing for me and what I love the most about this whole thing is that Bryan Rust is essentially finishing out the Crosby era. Hopefully they can also re-sign Jake Gensel to a long-term deal in 2 years, because these are the type of guys I want to go to that next era with, you know, post-Crosby era. And going back to the last 2 years of this Rust contract, even if it is, let's say Rust is getting 20 points at that point per season, you know, he's terrible production-wise. I don't think it matters. I don't care for that because I think a guy like Russ can be so valuable to what the Penguins will try and do after Crosby, assuming they're going to do that rebuild eventually. Having that 35, 36-year-old Bryan Rust, even if he's no good anymore and he's not producing and he's just overpaid, his presence will be so big just to lead the Penguins to that next era. And, you know, you're talking about a guy who I think can be the next captain of this team. And I know that just sounds crazy to say because, you know, Crosby's still here and Crosby's never going to go anywhere, right? But we're getting to that point, you know, of life as Penguins fans where slowly but surely we have to start thinking of that post-Crosby era because it's coming a lot closer than we think. Because I can 100% see a world where Sidney Crosby retires or moves, actually, screw that, retires with the Penguins. And, you know, Bryan Rust gets the C on his chest. And having a guy in your lineup who you can look at and be like, yes, one day this guy can be the captain. I think an asset like that is so valuable, and it goes so much higher than just numbers and if he's scoring goals. He could be getting no goals by then, and I still think it's a worth it contract. And overall, I just find it so cool that this is a guy that came on, won the back-to-back cups with this team, is going to close out the 87 era, and is going to be one of the faces to start the next era, which I love so much. So now that this is done, Ron Hextall still has a lot of work to do. Malkin, Letang, Raquel, the three big names left. Then you'll have some depth pieces like Kapanen, Heinen, DeSmith. And as of right now, the Penguins sit with $24 million in cap to try and sign those guys, and potentially more in free agency. We'll see when we get there. I have a feeling Malkin is next because he was on that same level as Rust in displaying how much he wanted to come back. It's going to be a fun next couple of months. Ron Hextall has a lot of work to do. He's definitely not finished here. Give me your thoughts on this contract extension. I'm going to assume everybody likes it, I would hope. And who do you think the Penguins sign next? As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. I hope it's a Malkin or Letang re-signing video. Please, hockey gods.